12 months ago, I proposed and debated a pay-related emergency motion before you, which you resoundingly supported. Today, 12 months on, I will not stand here before you and relay the glaring signs and symptoms of a fast deteriorating and deepening nursing recruitment and retention crisis and an attempt to insult you to offer a diagnosis to highly educated and vastly experienced healthcare professionals who have correctly foreseen and diagnosed the condition time and time again, day in, day out, as you face utter despair, demoralisation, chaos and burnout in your respective workplaces for in excess of 10 years now. My colleague Margaret, Second Vice President, who will second the motion, will somewhat quantify your despair and burnout with facts and figures that continue to deteriorate since we debated this motion 12 months ago. I propose to put context on where we are now in our most recent journey with regard to our very modest, justifiable and long overdue granting of any pay parity with therapeutic grades of healthcare professionals. The moratorium on nurse and midwife recruitment has been the most destructive and crude instrument ever to have been visited on our professions and public health service. Severe long-term damage was inflicted, yet nobody has ever been held accountable, politician or employer. I am confident that it did not save the Exchequer one red cent and that we will pay dearly for this for decades to come. We as an organisation have fully complied with all processes for pay restoration to date. More recent agreements such as the Emergency Department Agreement of 2016 and Funded Workforce Plan of 2017 were, despite very serious and deepening nursing crisis, entirely initiated by the INMO and without any foresight by the employer. Because of a complete lack of trust and belief in our employer, the INMO members had a monitoring process built in, chaired by an independent chair, to ensure compliance with the terms and conditions of both agreements. Through the independent chair, we met monthly with the HSE to ensure that all efforts to recruit and retain were being pursued by the HSE. Such agreements prohibited us from dealing with the cause of the crisis, which is pay, and as a result, attempts by the HSE to recruit were met with failure, and in fact worsened because of a complete failure by the HSE to also retain nurses and midwives. The tap was opened somewhat, but the hole in the bucket was never plugged. The agreements, as stated, prohibited us from having our basic pay addressed when it was abundantly clear that our staffing crisis could never be addressed without the issue of addressing low pay in our professions. Government and social partners agreed pay could only be addressed under a Public Service Pay Commission. We prepared a very comprehensive case to the Public Service Pay Commission as to why nurses and midwives needed special attention if the recruitment and retention crisis in nursing and midwifery was to be addressed. The Public Service Pay Commission has given a commitment, along with doctors and nurses and midwives, to be the first group to be dealt with under this commission. You may now be asking why an emergency motion is needed if there's a process has not yet concluded. This emergency motion is before you to ensure that you as members are consulted on the outcome of this process. The realisation of the benefits of the Public Service Pay Commission depend entirely on the good faith of those who are party to the agreement, the government and the employer. We are fully complied with the process, yet evidence-based submission to the Public Service Commission were sometimes an exercise in stating the obvious. Recently, the Public Service Pay Commission, without consultation with the INMO, engaged a private company to survey nurses and midwives, despite the wealth of evidence supporting the point that nurses and midwives are the lowest paid professional grade in the public service. Out of a total of 44 questions in their survey, 1 related to pay. This emergency motion reassures you and sends a very clear message that it is without question, colleagues, that nurses and midwives will not accept any further delays. We require a clear timetable for implementation. We accepted the Public Service Pay Commission on the clear basis of early recommendations to Government. At the end of May, June of this year, talks will commence within 1 month. If procedure lets us down, or we believe that it has been manipulated to present us obtaining fairness and equality of pay across our pay scales, we will mobilise to ensure collectively that we stand as one. And knowing the road that needs to be taken, we will take it without hesitation to protect patients and future generations of nurses and midwives to obtain parity of pay with our comparative healthcare professionals. And I ask you to support the motion. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Margaret Frahel, Second Vice President, Executive Council. I just want to put some facts before you all here today. to see why we are now in a crisis and we cannot recruit or retain. Firstly, we work a 39-hour week as compared to any other country. So we're working longer hours. Secondly, our hourly rate. A nurse at max the scale at the moment is on £22.25 an hour. In Australia, that's €30 an hour. Thirdly, our healthcare assistant grade. This anomaly has to be addressed, and addressed now. A nurse on the 5th point of scale is on the same salary as a healthcare assistant who's on the max of a scale. This anomaly has to be addressed, and addressed now, because the healthcare assistant reports to the nurse, and the nurse is accountable. I also wish to talk about our overseas recruitment. As you know, we could not staff our wards or departments without our overseas nurses. But yet, when I delved in the figures for 2016, we have spent as taxpayers £10.3 million recruiting from overseas. It costs £9,500 to £11,000 to recruit and adapt a nurse to this country to work in our wards. That is unbelievable, that we've spent £10.3 million in 16. What have we spent now? I also have to say, I work by my colleagues, our allied healthcare professionals. After 1 year in the service, they can earn £37,410. A nurse after 1 year of service, £30,800. This is a huge differential, considering they work a shorter hour week as well. And also, it is the same academic grade to get into our colleges for these courses. It is no wonder, as I stand here today, that our 1,500 graduates who will come out at the end of the year, 70% have said they're going to emigrate. 70%. I urge you, and I ask you, it has been short-term thinking and short-term planning has led to this crisis. Not us, it has been our governments. Next month, the Public Service Pay Commission is going to come out. We'll all be balloted. But I urge you as members to listen to loud and clear what I'm going to say. We are the lowest paid professional grade in the entire health service. That is an absolute disgrace. We've been very patient. We're working in tolerable conditions. And I want Minister Harris just to listen to us today. If our pay issues are not addressed, there'll be no Irish nurses working in the profession. And I just want to finish by saying that unless we have our Irish graduates here in this country caring for our citizens, which they deserve, it's an absolute disgrace. And one word to Minister Harris: invest now and reap the rewards. Thank you.
As a student nurse, I spend most of my time on the wards working alongside very highly skilled nurses, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, social workers, and as a part of a large multidisciplinary team. However, there's a worrying shortage of new graduate nurses staying to work in Ireland. In fact, 71% this year have said that they would like to leave. At the same time, 79% also identify an increase in pay as an incentive that would keep them here. Like other MDT members, we complete a 4-year Level 8 bachelor's degree. Despite this, graduate nurses' salaries start off at €28,768 per year. We work nights, bank holidays, weekends, unlike the other MDT. The other members of the MDT start off at around $34,000 per year. My question is, what did we do to deserve this gap in pay compared to our other allied healthcare professionals on the wards? To Minister Simon Harris, once again, invest now and reap the rewards.
Joe Tully, Dublin Southwest Branch. All the stats that have been presented beautifully by Tony and by our Vice Presidents have been well known to us for years. We have argued this again and again and again. We have voted again and again and again for action, and I think You don't really have to urge members to take action. Members are ready to take action. We're at our wits' end. We want to take action. And lastly, and I say this with as much respect as I can, I want to urge the leadership to understand that we want to take action and we're ready for it.
Okay, Madam
Thank you,
President,
Bridget.
General Secretary, Executive Council. What I want to see on next Saturday's Independent, the 4th of May, is that Simon Harris is increasing the increase of student numbers by double the amount by this September. Richard Bruton was able to do it for the teachers in January of this year. And he didn't have to sit around the table and talk to the teachers. After the AGM, he was able to say it in the Independent. So I'm calling on Mr. Harris now to sit up and face it. All the figures are already in front of him. We don't need to sit around the table again and talk about all the figures that have been presented here today. Not alone did Richard Bruton talk about the need for the teachers. He talked about the subject quotas. In other words, the subjects that the teachers need to be doing. So we can talk about the patient quotas and what nurses we need to do in certain areas and go into certain areas. In the win in November 17, Liam Doran states, 2018 will be the year of decision making. I hope it will. In staffing agreements in March 17, we needed, as Tony pointed out, sorry Tony, we needed 1,224 nurses. And by September of that year, we only had got 13. Like, we're playing a losing game here the whole time. Agency costs are magnanimous. Phil in the February win talks about facing forward. We certainly need to be facing somewhere. Okay. Why have we got ourselves into this problem? You know, yes, it's about pay. It's hugely about pay. For students and staff nurses, the average salary in America is $56,000, and that equates to 46,000 euros. Like, how far behind are we? A student teacher is on 35,000, and yet a student grad nurse is on 28. That's a disgrace. Now, that didn't happen this year or last year or the year before. That's over the last 20 years. We've been falling behind for 20 years, ladies.
Yeah.
When we talk about recruitment, who are we going to recruit and where are we going to recruit them? I mean, there's a lot of people going into social care that can't actually make the points for CAO. I think there should be a pathway for social care. People who go into social care, if they get a distinction, they can go into first-year nursing. You know, when the teachers and the lecturers in these all higher institutes can see that these people would make suitable nurses just because they couldn't get in because the points were 420. Let's all try and get 420 points, shall we? Do you know? I mean, it's a bit of a try, let me tell you now. I want to say that we need to advertise and we need to sell ourselves, you know. Nursing is not a fancy job. Let's face it, it's not. But it's a bloody important one.
Yeah. Hear, hear.
Like, the work that we do is so important. We save people's lives, we keep people alive, we support people, we communicate, and we do everything we can for them. I mean, people should be actually singing our praises, really. Talk about retaining. Retaining is all about pay again. As I said, you have the average salary in America, 46,000 euros. Patient ratio is very important. I look down at Executive Council here, and a lot of you are in positions of CNM3s and you're in positions of ADONs. You have wards filled with what types of patients. You need to look at, you know, the patient ratio that these young graduates and young nurses are minding. You know, are they looking after 10 patients, 12 patients? There's a huge difference when you see what, you know, the calibre of patient people are looking at. And there should be specific ratios for specific wards. We need to mind our students. I'm constantly saying this. I'm a student advocate. I spoke earlier today here about students. I'm passionate about them. We need to mind them. We need to body them. No student should ever feel that they're unsafe in practice. You know, as I said, the CNM2 is a linchpin. There's no point in having, we talk about ANPs, there's no point in having a penthouse of ANPs when you haven't got the nurses, when you haven't got the foundation. You know, there's no point in sending us on up to ANPs. We need to look at accommodation for students. We need to look at meal allowances for students. I mean, we can't. There is no replacement for the students that we train.
Bridget, can you just finish?
I know.
Up? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Next year is our centenary year. Let's not come back here again talking the same. You know, let's not.
Madam President, just to let you know, we have gone past the 15 minutes allocated.
Oh, that's fine. I'm coming now.
No,
yeah.
If we're going to suspend standing orders to continue.
I'm coming now.
No, just to ask to suspend standing orders to continue the debate.
One more minute. I need to require to suspend standing orders report number 2 in order to be able to continue, and therefore I have to put it to the floor. Do I extend out for 10 minutes in order to let the debate complete? Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions?
I mentioned one thing about Tony O'Brien when he was asked earlier this year why he hired 3 times more admin and clerical staff. And his answer was that many admin staff help nurses and other frontline workers on patient care. I'd like to see that. Tony O'Brien said that the reason he hired 3 times more admin and clerical staff was that many admin staff help nurses and other frontline workers on patient care. I'd like to mention one thing which I would prefer not to mention here today. And I'd like to mention a silent little killer in our nursing recruitment and retaining. And that pertains to ourselves. I want to talk about the over-delegation from the hierarchy down. The people that dump policy making on CNM1s and CNM2s that are trying to run a busy ward. You know, and the laziness that can occur in that echelon of higher-ups. I want to talk about a layer that has been introduced into hospitals.
Bridget, sorry, just
I know, I have
as the chair,
yeah.
in interest of fairness, you've got to wind up your
fine.
debate within the next sentence, please.
Right.
Thank you.
The layer that has been incurred in our hospitals of CNM3s and ADONs. No need for them at all. A good CNM2 will run a ward and a DON should be able to communicate down.
Just, I suppose, in relation to this, when I opened this service, Andrew Morton, Operating Department Nurses Section in Dublin South West Branch, when we created this Motion 9 that's to be debated, how insulting to think that we have now. We've had mansplaining, HSE splaining, politicians splaining, and now we have the Public Service Pay Commission splaining to tell nurses what it is they should be doing. And the splaining bit means that they're telling us with a condescending tone what we should be doing. This was supposed to be a pay commission, and suddenly they ask one question out of 44. They know well what's wrong, but they don't want to admit it, and they don't want to acknowledge the role that nurses perform, and they certainly don't want to pay us. But unfortunately, I think this time the INMO can't be for turning, because I have had enough. And I'll be out of this country. I've left before and I'll leave again. I'm 25 years nursing. I'm a CNM2. 600 and something euros a week really doesn't cut it for me with the masters. I've saved a lot of money in the past in the HSE, and very, very difficult to get up when I'm watching people with no education and qualification getting up to try and manage the administration of the HSE, and they have absolutely zero ability. And we have seen that because of the hundreds extra that have been employed. And look at the disgrace of the scandals we've had this week. From a perioperative perspective, I look back, and from 2007 to 2016, we're now doing 50% more surgery than we did back in 2007, yet we've done 12,000 less major surgeries. So we are here for the patients of this country. Yes, we're here for pay, but the patients are suffering because of our pay.
Siobhan O'Brien, the Cork HSE branch. I'm so proud to stand here today and to have listened to my colleagues here and to know the hard work that's done by the highly skilled, highly competent nurses throughout the health service. Whether we work on the wards or out in the community, we lead the way. We are the ones who provide the holistic care to all of our patients. We recognise the care, the compassion and the commitment which we give in all weathers at all times. Be it on the wards, as I say, or in the community where in primary care teams we lead out in the provision of services for the clients in the community, considering the complexities of social issues and the medical complexities that we are all dealing with in our day-to-day practices. We are the professionals who are accountable. It is just unbelievable to consider that somebody without a professional qualification is on a higher pay grade than nurses as professionals who are accountable for what we do, and we are the ones who will be held to account if anything goes wrong. I wonder where that lies with regard to the HSE managers, senior managers, lay managers, who are directing services but refusing to accept the crisis that we're in. We as nurses are the cornerstone of the health service. We need to be given that recognition. We need to be valued. Health is the basic fabric of our lives and fabric of society. This brings to mind to me a quote. I gather it was Martin Luther King once said, the world begins to end when we become silent about things that matter. And I think it's time for us to stop being silent. We need to be heard. Thank you.
Eilish Fitzgerald, Executive Council. This union will be 100 years next year, and the nurses that started this union, certainly it was about pay, and here we are 100 years, and we're still talking about pay. Yeah. However, our union has submitted a report to the Public Service Commission, 2 reports actually, and you can be found on the website, outlining why we have the problem with recruitment and retention. And of course, pay and conditions are the big thing, and it's pay. And that's what we hear today, that's what we have all years, it's always pay. We are the poor relations, but we do deliver fantastic care to all our patients out there. However, I would say to the Pay Commission, who undertook this survey without any consultation with the INMO, one question on pay alone. The rest, of course, were lovely, fluffy ones around. I hope you all did it, or certainly, and put your, there was very little space there to put your comment really on it, but at the end, I think I did put my comment. I had no problem in putting my name either to it, and I did it, because after all, I want to make sure that I have a nurse in my old age, and that's coming fairly quickly. There's more days behind me than in front of me, but anyway, I want nurses there too. So as I say, the survey has, as I said, was only one question, but I say to Pascal O'Donoghue, who do hold the funding here, take heed. We're not here, we're not the little quiet ladies anymore, We've been here, we want action, and we will have action if our claim is not made. We have stayed in procedure. But the big bus will be coming. Government and HSE, we're here. So you better deliver, Pay Commission. Thank you.
I'm just up, I suppose, saying that we are here to send a message to the Minister and the Government and the HSE that we've had enough. If the recommendations do not refer to pay as an issue, then we will be out. The Government have exhausted every approach with absolutely no success. 91 applicants to bring them home and 50% left within a year. That's absolutely ridiculous. Bring them home to what? To poor pay and poor conditions. It should be called send them away. 70% of our grads are telling us that they will leave, and just to say that this will be a year for action.
Angela Nolan, ADON, ADPHN, NS section. Margaret Frahel reminded us that nurses have a longer working week than any other health professional. I work in the community, and I noticed that our allied health professionals work a 37-hour week, and they have waiting lists of 3 months, 4 months, maybe even 6 months. And when that happens, they're rewarded by the HSE they can now recruit more allied health professionals to get rid of their waiting lists. But public health nurses don't have waiting lists, and they work a 39-hour week. So maybe if we're looking to recruit nurses, maybe we should look at the notion of creating waiting lists. Just a thought. Thank you.
I'll be very brief. Anne McGowan, Sligo branch, obviously speaking hugely in favour of the motion, agreeing with everything that's been said before. I just want to remind ourselves in this room that we have, as Joe said earlier, year after year at conference talked about pay and conditions and the need for equality. And to remind people that it's really successive governments and ministers of health and other departmental officials that have actually let us down. The INMO has never let us down. Anything that we have achieved, any improvements in pay and conditions that have been achieved down through the years have been achieved through the great leadership that this union actually has. And, you know, that line from the film says, "Show us the money." Well, the time is now for us to see the money. And I know through the unity that is present in this union that we actually will achieve that. So, you know, let's stand together, let's do it together, and the time is now for equality.
Maria McLaughlin in Shone branch. When we talk about international pay, I trained over in Boston. I'm living in Ireland 25 years. I made more as a newly qualified staff nurse in Boston than I did up until I got my senior staff nurse grade here. So it took me 20 years to make as much money as I left behind when I came to live in this country. So I would say to everyone, please support the motion and let's try to get the pay back because we are 20 years behind. Thank you.
I just want to throw one point out there. I think just given the scandal that has been, I suppose, that has evolved over the last week, and I suppose exposing the way women have been treated in this country, I can't help but think that perhaps it's because we're predominantly a female profession or female professions that we've been treated in this way. I think, you know, or just they're women, they'll take it, and well, I think that's we've put that behind us. We need now to be recognised for the service we give this country, and I'm asking Minister Harris to do that now. Please support this.